You wake up one morning and something feels off. The world seems to have moved on while you were still trying to figure out where you belong. Your friends seem to be thriving. New careers, new families, new dreams coming true. You scroll through your feed and see people your age doing everything you once thought you'd be doing by now. And then there's you, sitting there, wondering when everything started to move faster than you could follow. It's a quiet fear that seeps into your thoughts. Maybe you miss your chance. Maybe time decided you don't get to be part of the story anymore. But here's the truth, and it may sting a little. Time didn't leave you behind. You stopped walking. It's not age that slows you down, it's resistance. The more you fight change, the heavier everything feels. We grow up thinking life is a race, that we have to reach certain milestones by certain ages. Success by 30, stability by 40, peace by 50. And when we don't, we start to believe we've fallen behind. But in Buddhism, there's no such thing as being behind, because there's no finish line. The moment you believe life has a timeline, you start comparing yourself to others, and suffering begins. You start measuring your worth by someone else's pace. But the irony is, every moment you spend worrying about being behind is another moment you actually fall behind. Not from others, but from yourself. You've stepped off your own path to chase someone else's rhythm, and that's why you feel lost. The Buddha called it anicca, impermanence. Everything changes all the time. The seasons, your thoughts, your desires, your pain, nothing stays still. So, why do we expect our lives to move in straight lines when everything in the universe moves in cycles? The tree doesn't mourn its fallen leaves. It doesn't fight winter. It lets go because it knows that letting go is what makes space for spring. But we humans, we grip, we cling to our youth, our plans, our old versions of ourselves like they're life rafts, even when they're already sinking. We say things like, I miss who I used to be, not realizing that who you used to be had to die for you to live again. You're not supposed to stay the same. You're supposed to outgrow yourself, again and again. The real reason you feel left behind isn't that the world is moving too fast. It's that you stop moving with it. You've been standing still, waiting for life to look familiar again, waiting for clarity, for motivation, for someone to tell you that you're ready. But the universe doesn't send invitations. It offers openings. You say you've lost time, but time never left. It's right here, waiting for you to start again. Every day you resist change. You choose comfort over growth. And comfort, when stretched too long, becomes a quiet kind of death. Look in the mirror. What do you see, wrinkles or evidence? Because that face staring back at you isn't proof that time betrayed you. It's proof that you've lived. Each line is a record of every storm you survived, every lesson you've earned. The face you have now isn't your loss. It's your wisdom made visible. Yet so many people spend their lives fighting age, chasing the illusion of youth instead of the reality of growth. They treat time as the enemy, when it's actually the teacher. The Buddha once said, you can search the entire universe for someone more deserving of your love than yourself, and you will not find them. That includes your older self, the version of you that hesitated, that fell, that took longer than expected. Maybe you didn't waste time. Maybe you just needed time to understand yourself. And when you finally stop comparing, something incredible happens. Silence. And in that silence, you realize there was never a race. There was only learning, unfolding, becoming. You stop chasing what's next and start noticing what's here. You see that the people you envied aren't ahead of you. They're just walking their own path. Suddenly, the pressure dissolves. You don't need to catch up anymore. You just need to wake up. So start small. Move again, not toward success, but toward awareness. Read something that challenges you. Sit with your discomfort. Let yourself be a beginner again. Because the truth is, you never get left behind when you're willing to begin again. That's what aging really is. Not decay, but refinement. Not the end of your story, but the polishing of your wisdom. The world isn't moving without you. It's waiting for you, patiently, quietly, to take another step. So the next time that voice whispers, "You're too late," pause and smile, because that voice isn't time. It's fear disguised as logic. And fear has never been a good teacher. But awareness changes everything. We grow up believing that control is power, that if we can control our emotions, our plans, our future, we'll finally feel safe. It sounds logical, responsible, even admirable. But the more you try to control life, the more it slips away from you. Control doesn't protect you. It drains you. It's the quiet weight that makes your shoulders tighten, your heart restless, and your soul old before its time. Look closely at the world around you. People don't just grow old in their faces or bodies. They grow old in their minds. They harden with expectations, opinions, and fear. They walk through life dragging invisible chains, thinking this is how things should be. But life doesn't follow our shoulds. It moves like water, fluid, unpredictable, beyond ownership. And the more you try to hold it, the more it cuts your hands. Buddhism calls this craving. Tanha, not craving for pleasures, but craving for control. The illusion that if you can get life to behave, peace will finally arrive. But peace doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. Letting go isn't weakness. It's the ultimate form of power. Because when you let go, you stop fighting the ocean and start learning how to float. We believe control keeps us safe. But has it ever truly worked? You plan, prepare, predict, and life still arrives uninvited, dressed in chaos. The job you thought was secure disappears. The person you counted on leaves. The version of your future you built in your head never shows up. And yet, you're still here, still breathing, still standing. Maybe safety was never about control. Maybe it was about trust, trusting that even when things fall apart, you won't. The Buddha once said that suffering doesn't come from pain itself, but from our resistance to pain. You don't suffer because life changes. You suffer because you believe it shouldn't. You call it being responsible, but maybe it's fear in disguise, fear of uncertainty, fear of surrender, fear of being without control. Control doesn't make you strong. It makes you rigid. And nothing ages faster than rigidity. Watch a child. Their body moves freely. Their laughter spills out effortlessly. Their curiosity dances without planning. They aren't trying to control the moment. They are the moment. That's why they feel so alive. Then look at an adult. Stiff posture, clenched jaw, mind rehearsing the next worry. Control has turned into armor, and that armor becomes a cage. We don't grow old because time passes. We grow old because we stop flowing. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that life knows how to move without your constant supervision. When a river bends, it doesn't resist. It doesn't say, "This isn't the direction I wanted." It simply flows. And because it flows, it finds the ocean. So what does letting go look like in practice? It's not some dramatic, spiritual moment. It's the quiet choice to stop rewriting the past, to stop saying, "if only," to stop torturing yourself with the illusion that you could have done better. You couldn't have. If you could, you would have. That's the mercy of truth. Letting go is also releasing your obsession with the future, the endless what-ifs, and "I'll be happy when." You tell yourself you're preparing, but in reality, you're postponing peace. You're waiting for control to give you permission to rest. But control never does, because control is a liar. It promises security but delivers exhaustion. Buddhism teaches that freedom begins when we see things as they are, not as we want them to be. Everything changes, and that's not tragedy. That's grace. Because once you stop fighting change, you start flowing with it. And movement is life. What makes you tired isn't the pace of life. It's the constant argument you have with it. You're not exhausted because things are hard. You're exhausted because you keep saying, this shouldn't be happening. But it is happening. And when you finally stop resisting, peace enters quietly, like air returning to a room after a storm. The Buddha never said, let go and lose everything. He said, let go and stop suffering. You hold so tightly to things, love, identity, youth, certainty, as if they'll disappear without your grip. But your grip doesn't save them. It crushes them. You bleed from the effort of holding on. The moment you open your hands, you realize life still holds you. There's an old Zen story about a monk carrying a heavy bag across a river. When he reached the other side, his teacher asked, why didn't you put the bag down? The monk replied, I already crossed. The teacher smiled. Yes, but you're still carrying it. That's what most of us do. We survive the storm, but still carry the weight of it long after the sky has cleared. What would it mean to finally put your bag down? To stop replaying regrets, re-editing the past, or controlling the future? Maybe life isn't asking you to fix it. Maybe it's asking you to feel it. And maybe that's where peace was hiding all along, in the simple act of letting life be life. Here's the paradox. When you stop trying to control everything, you begin to experience real control, not over circumstances, but over your response. You become less reactive, more aware. You stop pushing life, and instead, you begin to move with it. That's the kind of power no plan can buy and no failure can take away. You don't become lighter by fixing your problems. You become lighter by releasing the need to fix everything. Control weighs you down, but surrender makes you timeless. You start to see that youth was never about age. It was about openness. The more open you are, the younger your energy becomes. The more rigid you are, the older you feel. So the next time life shifts, when something ends, when plans fall apart, when uncertainty returns, pause. Don't tighten your grip. Breathe. Let go. You don't lose control. You lose the illusion of it. And what's left is something far more real, peace, freedom, and a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to manage life to trust it. Because every time you let go, you don't lose a part of yourself. You uncover one. And that, right there, is what it means to truly live. We've been told that comparison is poison, that envy is a flaw, a moral failure, a sign of weakness. Don't compare yourself to others, they say. Focus on your own path. It sounds wise, but the truth is, comparison is part of being human. The problem isn't that we compare. The problem is that we don't understand what comparison is trying to tell us. Envy isn't evil. It's information. It's the language of your unlived life whispering to you. There's something here you long for. It's not asking you to hate someone else for having it. It's asking you to wake up to what's asleep in you. But instead of listening, we judge. We bury envy under guilt and shame. We pretend we're above it, but it still eats away at us in quiet moments. We scroll through other people's lives, not realizing that we're not jealous of them. We're jealous of who we could be if we stopped betraying our own calling. That's the great misunderstanding. Comparison doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means something in you recognizes a reflection of what you desire. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from ignorance, not seeing clearly. And envy, when seen clearly, isn't darkness. It's direction. The truth is, you only envy what's already inside you. You don't feel jealous of things that have nothing to do with your essence. You don't envy a mountain climber if your soul doesn't crave heights. You don't envy a musician unless something in you longs to create sound. You don't envy love unless you're ready to open your heart. Envy points toward possibility, not punishment. But society trained us to use comparison as a weapon instead of a compass. We compare to prove our worth, not to understand our truth. That's why it hurts so much. We turn someone else's light into proof of our darkness. But what if comparison was never meant to make you feel small? What if it was meant to remind you of the parts of yourself you've abandoned? There's a story in Buddhist teaching about a man who looks into a mirror and becomes angry because his reflection frowns back at him. He spends his life trying to fix the mirror, not realizing the face that needs a change is his own. That's what envy does. It shows you your reflection in the world, not to mock you, but to invite you to return home to yourself. When you see someone living with confidence, it's not life punishing you. It's life showing you what you're capable of when fear isn't in charge. When you see someone free, radiant, at peace, don't shrink. Don't say, "That's not me." Say, "That's the version of me I haven't met yet." Envy becomes toxic only when you deny it. When you suppress it, it mutates into bitterness, gossip, resentment. But when you sit with it, when you breathe into it without judgment, envy transforms into clarity. It tells you where you've been asleep, what you've neglected, what you secretly crave. It says, "This matters to you, and that's sacred." You see, the opposite of envy isn't indifference. It's inspiration. But to reach that point, you have to stop pretending you're not affected. You have to admit that something inside you stirs when you see someone shine. That's not weakness. That's awakening. The Buddha never condemned emotion. He only warned against ignorance. He said, "When you understand your mind, it cannot harm you." The same applies to envy. When you understand it, it stops burning you and starts guiding you. So the next time you feel the familiar sting of comparison, don't turn away. Don't rush to delete the feeling. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, what is this emotion pointing me toward? Maybe it's not about wanting their life. Maybe it's about wanting your life lived fully. There's another paradox here. You'll never truly stop comparing until you start creating. The energy you waste measuring yourself against others is the same energy that could be shaping something beautiful. The cure for envy isn't pretending to be content. It's expressing what envy is trying to say. It's saying, "I want that aliveness too," and then doing something about it. When you start living with intention, comparison loses its grip. You no longer look at others as threats to your worth, but as reminders of your potential. You begin to bless what you used to resent. You look at beauty and say, "Thank you for reminding me of what's possible." You look at success and say, "That's evidence of abundance, not lack." Because what if we all stopped treating other people's light as competition and started seeing it as collective proof that light exists at all? What if someone else's win was not your loss, but your preview? The truth is, there's no race. There never was. There's only timing, and timing is divine. The flower that blooms in spring isn't late, because the one next to it bloomed in winter. It's just different in season. You don't need to rush your unfolding. You don't need to hate someone else for reaching their moment first. Life isn't keeping score. It's keeping rhythm. When you finally understand that, envy softens into empathy. You stop saying, "Why them?" and start saying, "If them, then me too, in my own way, in my own time." You see, comparison only hurts when you forget who you are. When you remember, it becomes a teacher. It stops being about scarcity and starts being about potential. The people you envy are often the ones showing you the next chapter of your own evolution. So the next time envy visits you, don't slam the door. Invite it in. Listen to what it's trying to tell you. It's not here to shame you. It's here to wake you. Because envy at its core is love turned inward. Love for the life you haven't yet allowed yourself to live. And once you realize that, you stop feeling jealous and start feeling alive. We've been told that comparison is poison, that envy is a flaw, a moral failure, a sign of weakness. Don't compare yourself to others, they say. Focus on your own path. It sounds wise, but the truth is, comparison is part of being human. The problem isn't that we compare. The problem is that we don't understand what comparison is trying to tell us. Envy isn't evil. It's information. It's the language of your unlived life whispering to you. There's something here you long for. It's not asking you to hate someone else for having it. It's asking you to wake up to what's asleep in you. But instead of listening, we judge. We bury envy under guilt and shame. We pretend we're above it, but it still eats away at us in quiet moments. We scroll through other people's lives, not realizing that we're not jealous of them. We're jealous of who we could be if we stopped betraying our own calling. That's the great misunderstanding. Comparison doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means something in you recognizes a reflection of what you desire. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from ignorance, not seeing clearly. And envy, when seen clearly, isn't darkness. It's direction. The truth is, you only envy what's already inside you. You don't feel jealous of things that have nothing to do with your essence. You don't envy a mountain climber if your soul doesn't crave heights. You don't envy a musician unless something in you longs to create sound. You don't envy love unless you're ready to open your heart. Envy points toward possibility, not punishment. But society trained us to use comparison as a weapon instead of a compass. We compare to prove our worth, not to understand our truth. That's why it hurts so much. We turn someone else's light into proof of our darkness. But what if comparison was never meant to make you feel small? What if it was meant to remind you of the parts of yourself you've abandoned? There's a story in Buddhist teaching about a man who looks into a mirror and becomes angry because his reflection frowns back at him. He spends his life trying to fix the mirror, not realizing the face that needs a change is his own. That's what envy does. It shows you your reflection in the world, not to mock you, but to invite you to return home to yourself. When you see someone living with confidence, it's not life punishing you. It's life showing you what you're capable of when fear isn't in charge. When you see someone free, radiant, at peace, don't shrink. Don't say, "That's not me." Say, "That's the version of me I haven't met yet." Envy becomes toxic only when you deny it. When you suppress it, it mutates into bitterness, gossip, resentment. But when you sit with it, when you breathe into it without judgment, envy transforms into clarity. It tells you where you've been asleep, what you've neglected, what you secretly crave. It says, "This matters to you, and that's sacred." You see, the opposite of envy isn't indifference. It's inspiration. But to reach that point, you have to stop pretending you're not affected. You have to admit that something inside you stirs when you see someone shine. That's not weakness. That's awakening. The Buddha never condemned emotion. He only warned against ignorance. He said, "When you understand your mind, it cannot harm you." The same applies to envy. When you understand it, it stops burning you and starts guiding you. So the next time you feel the familiar sting of comparison, don't turn away. Don't rush to delete the feeling. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, what is this emotion pointing me toward? Maybe it's not about wanting their life. Maybe it's about wanting your life lived fully. There's another paradox here. You'll never truly stop comparing until you start creating. The energy you waste measuring yourself against others is the same energy that could be shaping something beautiful. The cure for envy isn't pretending to be content. It's expressing what envy is trying to say. It's saying, I want that aliveness too, and then doing something about it. When you start living with intention, comparison loses its grip. You no longer look at others as threats to your worth, but as reminders of your potential. You begin to bless what you used to resent. You look at beauty and say, thank you for reminding me of what's possible. You look at success and say, that's evidence of abundance, not lack. Because what if we all stopped treating other people's light as competition and started seeing it as collective proof that light exists at all? What if someone else's win was not your loss, but your preview? The truth is, there's no race. There never was. There's only timing, and timing is divine. The flower that blooms in spring isn't late, because the one next to it bloomed in winter. It's just different in season. You don't need to rush your unfolding. You don't need to hate someone else for reaching their moment first. Life isn't keeping score. It's keeping rhythm. When you finally understand that, envy softens into empathy. You stop saying, why them? And start saying, if them, then me too, in my own way, in my own time. You see, comparison only hurts when you forget who you are. When you remember, it becomes a teacher. It stops being about scarcity and starts being about potential. The people you envy are often the ones showing you the next chapter of your own evolution. So the next time envy visits you, don't slam the door. Invite it in. Listen to what it's trying to tell you. It's not here to shame you. It's here to wake you. Because envy at its core is love turned inward. Love for the life you haven't yet allowed yourself to live. And once you realize that, you stop feeling jealous and start feeling alive. We live in a culture obsessed with purpose. Everyone is searching for their why, their calling, their grand reason for existing, as if life is an equation that needs solving. From a young age, we're told that until we find our purpose, we're incomplete. So we read books, listen to gurus, chase careers, relationships, and titles, hoping that somewhere in all of it, the answer will appear like a light in the fog. But it never quite does it? You might have noticed this already. The harder you try to find your purpose, the further it seems to drift away. The more you ask, why am I here? The less you feel home. Because the truth is both uncomfortable and freeing. Life doesn't have a single purpose waiting to be found. Meaning isn't hidden somewhere out there. It's created right here, in this moment, by the way you live it. We've been conditioned to believe that purpose is some grand mission, something noble, world-changing, maybe even dramatic. But what if that idea itself is illusion? What if your life doesn't need to mean something in order to be meaningful? Think of a flower. It doesn't wake up wondering, what's my purpose? It simply blooms. It responds to the light, to the soil, to the rain, and in doing so, it fulfills its nature completely. No striving, no comparison, no existential panic. Just presence, just being. Humans, on the other hand, have turned existence into a puzzle. We've made being alive not enough. We've built an entire identity around finding purpose, as if life is an exam and the right answer will finally make us worthy. But the Buddha's wisdom cuts through this illusion like a sword. He said, do not seek the truth. only cease to cherish your opinions. Maybe purpose isn't something you discover by thinking more. Maybe it's what appears when you finally stop trying to control what life should mean. The irony is, the more you chase purpose, the more you reinforce the feeling that you don't have one. Every search begins with lack. The moment you say, I need to find my purpose, you're also saying, right now I'm not enough. That's why the search never ends, because it's built on the illusion of incompleteness. But what if you turn the idea upside down? What if you began with the radical thought that you already have purpose, simply because you exist? The moment you breathe, smile, love, hurt, create rest, that's purpose unfolding in real time. The purpose of life isn't to find meaning. It's to experience it. You see, purpose is not a destination. It's an awareness. When you're present, everything you touch becomes meaningful. Washing dishes, walking the park, talking to a stranger. When you're absent, even the grandest achievements feel hollow. The difference isn't what you do, but how awake you are while doing it. Buddhism teaches that attachment to ideas, even beautiful ones, is still attachment. The idea of purpose can become another trap. We cling to it the same way we cling to possessions or success, thinking it will complete us. But completion never comes through concepts. It comes through presence. When you're truly here, you don't need a reason to be. Being itself becomes enough. You might ask, but if I don't have a purpose, won't my life feel empty? Here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing life to have a purpose, you experience a fullness that no purpose can give. When you drop the obsession with meaning, everything becomes meaningful. The sky, the breath, the silence, all of it feels sacred again, because you're no longer trying to measure it. It's not that purpose doesn't exist. It's that it's not fixed. Purpose changes as you change. What felt meaningful at 20 may not feel the same at 40. And that's not failure. That's growth. The tree doesn't cling to its old leaves. It lets them fall. So why should you cling to old meanings? Life isn't about holding on to one why. It's about staying open to infinite whys as they evolve. There's a Buddhist saying, the meaning of life is just to see. To see, not to judge, not to label, not to explain. To see the reality of each moment, without trying to force it into a story. That's enlightenment in its simplest form. Not fireworks, just clarity. So maybe you don't need to find your calling. Maybe you just need to listen more deeply to the call that's already there, the quiet rhythm of your own existence, the urge to care, to create, to love, to rest, to be kind. That's life calling you every second. You've just been too busy searching for a purpose to hear it. The Western world loves to ask, what do you want to do with your life? But Buddhism asks a different question. How are you being with your life? The first is about control. The second is about connection. One keeps you chasing. The other brings you home. And maybe home was never a place or a purpose. Maybe home is this breath, this awareness, the simple fact that you are here now, fully alive. So stop searching for your purpose like it's a missing piece. You were never incomplete. Meaning isn't something you earn. It's something you notice. Look at the sunset. Feel the air move through your lungs. Watch a child laugh or a leaf fall. None of them are searching for meaning. They are meaning in motion. And maybe that's the final truth. Life doesn't owe you a purpose. You owe life your presence. Because when you're fully here, even for a single moment, that moment is enough. Everyone wants to be happy. It's the one universal desire. We spend our entire lives chasing that feeling through love, success, money, recognition, travel, even self-improvement. We tell ourselves, if I just get there, if I just achieve that, then I'll finally be happy. But here's the cruel irony. The more we chase happiness, the further it runs. Like a shadow, the moment we try to grasp it, it slips through our fingers. We were taught that happiness is something to pursue, a destination at the end of effort. But what if that belief itself is the root of our suffering? What if the chase, the endless striving, comparing, craving, is the very thing that keeps us from being happy at all? The Buddha once said, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." It sounds simple, almost too simple for the modern mind. But that's the point. We've made life too complicated. We've mistaken stimulation for joy, excitement for peace, pleasure for fulfillment. We've confused the high for the truth. The Western idea of happiness is often built on conditions. I'll be happy when I get the job, when I find love, when I lose weight, when I make it, when I'm healed. But life doesn't work that way. The moment you reach one, when another appears, the goalpost always moves. Happiness, then, becomes a future event that never arrives. Buddhism flips this thinking on its head. It says, stop chasing the feeling. Let it come and go like the wind. Happiness isn't something you catch. It's something you uncover. Once the noise of craving quiets down, think of a lake. When the surface is still, you can see your reflection clearly. But when it's disturbed, the image breaks apart. The water didn't lose its clarity. It just got shaken by movement. The same is true of your mind. Happiness was never missing. It was simply hidden beneath the waves of desire. Desire is tricky. It disguises itself as motivation. It whispers, "You're not there yet." It promises happiness later, but later never comes. The more you crave, the more you reinforce a belief that happiness lives somewhere else, in the future, in someone else, in another life. That illusion keeps you running forever, always exhausted, never arriving. But here's the paradox. When you stop running, happiness finds you. When you stop demanding life to make you happy, life suddenly feels lighter. The same air feels softer, the same morning brighter, the same ordinary moment sacred, because you're finally here, present, awake. We tend to imagine happiness as fireworks, loud, dazzling, ecstatic. But in truth, happiness is quiet. It's found in the stillness after a deep breath, in the silence between words. In the moment you stop needing everything to be different. Real happiness doesn't shout. It whispers. You might think letting go of the chase means giving up, but it's the opposite. It's surrendering the illusion of control so that you can experience life directly without constantly editing it. You stop saying this moment isn't enough and start realizing it always was. There's a story about a monk who was asked what he had gained from meditation. He smiled and said, "Nothing, but I've lost anger, anxiety, and insecurity. That's the essence of happiness. It's not something you add to your life. It's what remains when you let go of what clouds your peace." The modern world tells you to maximize pleasure, optimize experience, and curate your life. But happiness doesn't need optimization. It needs observation. Watch how it arises when you least expect it. When someone smiles at you for no reason, when the light hits the trees just right, when you're doing nothing at all. Those moments are small, but they're pure. You didn't earn them. You simply notice them. That's what Buddhism calls non-grasping joy. It's a joy that doesn't depend on outcome, a peace that doesn't need permission. You can have it washing dishes, walking your dog, or sitting in traffic, if you're awake enough to see it. So the real question isn't, how can I be happy? But what am I clinging to that keeps me from it? Because every form of suffering begins with resistance, wanting this moment to be other than it is. The moment you stop resisting, peace appears. We think happiness is rare, fragile, temporary. But maybe it's not happiness that's fleeting. Maybe it's our attention that is. Happiness doesn't disappear. We just stop noticing it. We move too fast, think too much, scroll too far, and miss the quiet miracle of being alive. You've been told to follow your happiness. But maybe happiness was never meant to lead you. Maybe you were meant to lead it by bringing awareness into each breath, each step, each act of kindness. You don't find happiness by searching for it. You create the conditions where it naturally blooms. Stillness, presence, compassion. When you understand that even sadness becomes sacred, you stop dividing life into good and bad, happy and unhappy. You start seeing everything as part of the same whole, like waves rising and falling on the same ocean. The joy and the sorrow are not opposites. They are dance partners, each giving meaning to the other. So stop chasing happiness like it's a finish line. Happiness isn't running away from you. You're just running past it. Slow down. Breathe. Look around. The miracle you've been searching for is already happening. The Buddha never promised constant happiness. He promised freedom. The freedom that comes when you stop needing life to be any other way than it is. And in that freedom, happiness arises naturally, not as a goal, but as a companion. Because the truth is, the happiest people aren't those who have everything they want. They're the ones who have learned to want what they already have. And maybe that's a final paradox. You stop suffering not by getting more joy, but by needing less of it. When you stop chasing happiness, happiness finally stops running. And there you are, not euphoric, not ecstatic, just quietly alive. And that somehow is enough. Everything you love will eventually change. That sentence sounds cruel at first, almost unbearable. Yet, it's the deepest truth life has to offer. The people you cherish, the things you build, even the face you see in the mirror, all of it is slipping moment by moment into something else. You can fight it, deny it, or grieve it, but you can't stop it, and maybe you're not supposed to. We grow up believing stability equals safety. We want things to stay, the relationship, the youth, the success, the peace. We cling to them as if holding tight enough could freeze time. But time doesn't freeze. It flows endlessly. And the more you fight its current, the more you suffer. Because what you're really fighting isn't the loss of things. It's the truth of life itself. Impermanence isn't life's flaw. It's life's nature. It's not the enemy. It's the teacher. The Buddha once said, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Most people read that as a warning, but it's actually a liberation. Impermanence isn't something to fear. It's what makes everything precious. Imagine if nothing changed. If every day, every feeling, every moment were frozen forever. There would be no growth, no music, no seasons, no birth or rebirth. Even joy would rot without the contrast of loss. You love the sunset precisely because it ends. You savor the flower because it fades. You cherish a touch because you know it won't last. The beauty of impermanence is that it teaches us how to love without holding, to appreciate without owning, to be fully here without needing forever. That's what freedom really is. Not keeping things the same, but learning to dance as they change. We spend so much of our lives trying to preserve photographs, memories, legacies, youth. We act as if permanence is the ultimate achievement. But permanence is an illusion. Everything you try to hold too tightly eventually breaks, not because life is cruel, but because that's how life renews itself. What dies gives space for what's next. There's a Japanese art form called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The cracks aren't hidden. They're highlighted, celebrated. The object becomes more beautiful for having been broken. That's impermanence in art and in spirit. You, too, are being reshaped by time, loss, and love. And every fracture is part of your golden design. The Western mind often sees change as loss, but the Buddhist mind sees it as truth, the only thing that's ever been consistent. Everything that comes must go, and everything that goes gives birth to something new. Nothing is really lost. It only transforms. Think of the ocean. Every wave rises and falls, but the water remains. That's what life is, waves of form and feeling, constantly rising and dissolving. You are not the wave. You are the ocean underneath. When you start to see through the illusion of permanence, something incredible happens. Fear dissolves. Because what can you lose when everything was never yours to keep? Your peace no longer depends on holding on, but on letting go gracefully. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop clinging, love deepens. Because now, you love things for what they are, not for how long they'll stay. You stop saying, don't leave, and start saying, thank you for being here. That simple shift transforms attachment into appreciation, and fear into gratitude. Impermanence makes every ordinary moment holy. The cup of coffee in your hands. This might be the last morning you drink it this way. The friend you text. This might be the last time you share this kind of laughter. The sunlight on your skin. This exact warmth will never happen again. When you realize that everything becomes sacred. Nothing is small anymore. The human mind wants to believe that endings are tragic. But endings are just beginnings wearing a different face. Death isn't the opposite of life. It's part of it. Every ending clears the space for renewal. The seed must die for the tree to live. The day must end for the stars to appear. Even the deepest heartbreak carves room for compassion to grow. So when life changes, when people leave, when seasons shift, when your reflection ages, don't see it as loss. See it as the universe breathing. You are part of that breath. The inhale and the exhale, the creation and the release. There's a story of a Zen monk who watched the cherry blossoms fall and whispered, "How lucky I am to live in a world where such beauty cannot last." That's the essence of wisdom, to see impermanence not as sorrow, but as grace. Everything you love will change. But maybe the purpose of love was never to keep. It was to awaken, to remind you that what's fleeting is also infinite when truly seen. Because the moment you're fully present, even a breath can last forever. So stop trying to make things permanent. Let them pass through you like music. A song isn't beautiful because it lasts. It's beautiful because it ends. And yet, somehow, the melody stays and you long after the sound fades. That's life. It doesn't stay, but it sings. And when you finally learn to listen, really listen, you realize impermanence isn't something to survive. It's something to bow to. You spend your whole life defending yourself, your image, your opinions, your story. You build walls around who you think you are and call it identity. You protect it, polish it, post about it. You say, this is me. But what if that me doesn't really exist? What if the thing you spend your whole life protecting is just a story, a fragile collection of memories, fears, and roles, constantly changing, never solid, never truly you? It sounds unsettling, doesn't it? Because the ego doesn't want to hear that it's imaginary. It wants to be seen, validated, important. It wants to survive. But that's exactly why it keeps you trapped. The Buddha called the self an illusion, anatta, no self. He didn't mean you don't exist. in a physical sense. He meant the fixed identity you cling to. The I, the me, the mine is not real. It's a temporary construction, like a sandcastle that crumbles the moment the tide comes in. You can spend your life decorating the castle, adding towers of pride, flags of achievement, moats of defense. But in the end, the ocean takes it all. And here's the strange thing. When you realize that it's not terrifying, it's liberating. Because when there's no solid self to protect, there's nothing left to fear. Think about it. How much of your suffering comes from defending something? Defending your beliefs, your reputation, your sense of being right? Every argument, every jealousy, every resentment stems from the same illusion. I must protect myself. But if that self is only a story, what exactly are you protecting? The ego loves to divide. It says, this is me, that's you. This is mine, that's theirs. It creates the illusion of separation. And in that separation, fear is born. You start living in defense mode, always comparing, always competing, always proving. You don't realize the prison bars are invisible, built by thought itself. But the truth is radical. You were never separate. The self is like a wave saying, I am not the ocean. It rises, names itself, fears disappearing, and then dissolves back into what it always was. The wave doesn't die when it falls. It returns home. When you look closely, the you defend is constantly shifting. The thoughts you had yesterday aren't the same today. Your emotions change by the hour. Your cells renew, your memories blur. If you were solid, you'd never change, but everything about you changes. So where's the real you? The thinker? The watcher? Or something deeper, the awareness beneath it all? That awareness, still vast, unchanging. That's what Buddhism calls your true nature. It's not a person. It's not a name. It's the silence behind every thought, the space in which every emotion arises and fades. You can't see it because you are it. The ego doesn't like that idea. It wants ownership. It says, my awareness. But awareness doesn't belong to anyone. It's what everything belongs in. Like the sky. Clouds move through it, but the sky never changes. Your thoughts, your moods, your identities, they're all clouds. You are the sky. When you forget that, life becomes war. You defend the clouds as if they're the sky. You take offense. You compare. You compete. You suffer. And the more you strengthen ego, the heavier life feels, because you're dragging around an identity that was never real to begin with. But when you see through it, truly see, everything lightens. You laugh at your seriousness. You stop needing to win every argument. You stop performing. You stop chasing approval. Because you realize there's nothing to prove when there's no one to protect. The modern world sells identity as power. Be somebody. Brand yourself. Stand out. But what if the real power is in disappearing? Not in the sense of dying, but dissolving the false walls of selfhood. The Zen masters call it dying before you die. It means awakening while you're still alive, letting go of the me that suffers so that life can flow through you freely. That's what freedom really is, not being who you are, but not needing to be anyone at all. When there's no self, there's no separation. Compassion becomes natural, because others aren't others anymore. They're reflections of the same awareness. You stop living from I versus you and start living from we. And in that space, love stops being effort and becomes your nature. You see, ego is always fragile because it's built on fiction. That's why it constantly needs validation, likes praise, control. Awareness, on the other hand, is unshakable. It doesn't need to be seen because it is the seeing. The greatest illusion isn't death. It's the idea that there's a you who could die. Once you glimpse that truth, you stop clinging to life. And paradoxically, that's when you start living fully. The taste of food becomes richer, the sound of rain deeper, the sight of another human more intimate. Because you're no longer filtering everything through me. You're just experiencing. Purely, completely, the ego lives in story. Awareness lives in silence. Between those two is the entire difference between suffering and freedom. So maybe the goal isn't to destroy the ego. You can't destroy what was never real. Maybe it's simply to stop believing every thought it tells you, to stop mistaking the mask for the face. Because when you stop defending the illusion of self, you discover the self that needs no defense, vast, open, infinite. And maybe that's what enlightenment really means. Not becoming something greater, but remembering you were never something separate. You are not the mask. You are the space the mask appears in. Not the wave, but the ocean. Not the name, but the silence before it. When you realize that, you don't disappear. You dissolve into everything. And that's when you finally see the self you were defending never existed. But what you are has never not been. We're taught to hold on to our dreams, to our people, to our control. From childhood, we learn that strength means endurance, the ability to grip, to fight, to never give up. But what if that definition is backwards? What if true strength isn't in holding on, but in letting go? Letting go doesn't sound heroic. It doesn't look powerful. It feels like surrender, and we've been trained to see surrender as weakness. But in the deepest spiritual sense, surrender isn't defeat. It's alignment. It's the quiet recognition that you were never in control to begin with. You see, the tighter we cling, the more we suffer. We cling to expectations, and they betray us. We cling to people, and they change. We cling to success, and it fades. Life keeps whispering the same truth. You can't keep anything, and yet we keep trying, exhausting ourselves in the process, calling it ambition, calling it love, calling it life. But there comes a moment, sometimes through heartbreak, sometimes through silence, when you finally realize everything you've been holding is already slipping through your fingers. You can fight the current, or you can float with it. And in that moment of surrender, you find something you never expected. Peace. Letting go is not giving up. It's giving in to the flow of what already is. It's the art of no longer arguing with reality. The Buddha called this non-attachment, but that word is often misunderstood. Non-attachment doesn't mean indifference or coldness. It means loving so fully that you don't need to possess. It means showing up completely and still being willing to let go when it's time. The river doesn't hold its water. It moves it forward. That's what makes it alive. When you let go, life moves again. Energy flows again. You stop being a dam and start being the river. The paradox of letting go is that you don't lose control. You regain freedom. Because the more you try to control life, the smaller it becomes. Control is built on fear. Fear of loss, fear of uncertainty, fear of change. But once you surrender, you realize fear only existed because you were trying to hold what could never be held. Letting go is a radical act of trust. Trusting that life knows how to carry you better than your ego does. Trusting that what leaves was never meant to stay. Trusting that even in uncertainty, there's a hidden order, a rhythm beyond your understanding, but not beyond your belonging. When you finally stop resisting, life stops feeling like a battle. You stop measuring, comparing, waiting. You start seeing. You start breathing. You start being. We spend so much time trying to secure happiness, to lock it down, protect it, make it last. But happiness, like everything else, can't be trapped. It moves. It shifts. It's meant to flow through you, not belong to you. The same goes for love. Love deepens when you stop clutching it. You stop saying, "Don't go," and start saying, "Thank you for coming." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. There's a quiet kind of power in surrender, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't control. It's the power of the ocean yielding to the shore, the tree bending to the wind, the soul bowing to the mystery of existence. And when you reach that space where you can let go without bitterness, you realize that nothing real is ever lost, because what's real was never yours to begin with. It's life's, and you are life's too. In the end, letting go is not about losing. It's about returning to simplicity you were born with before the mind learned fear, before the heart learned ownership. It's about remembering that peace doesn't come from what you hold. It comes from what you release. The mind will ask, "If I let go, what will be left of me?" And life will whisper back, "Everything real." Letting go is how the caterpillar becomes a butterfly, how the seed breaks open to become the tree, how death turns into birth again and again. The cycle never ends, because life itself is an endless letting go. And maybe that's what enlightenment really is, not escaping the world, not mastering it, but dissolving into it. No longer standing apart from the river, but realizing you are the river. You've spent your whole life trying to hold on to the idea of who you are, to how things should be, to the illusion of control. But what if life was never asking you to hold? What if it was asking you to open your hands, your heart, your mind, to stop clinging and start trusting? Because only open hands can receive. And when you finally let go, truly let go, you don't fall. You float. You realize that life has been holding you all along. In the end, all Buddhist truths lead to one. You gain nothing from awakening. You only lose what was never real. The search ends where surrender begins. And in that quiet, spacious freedom, you realize you were never separate. You were never lacking. You were never lost. You were life itself, dreaming of being a person, finally waking up